Should have started with that. But so just want to run through how I would like to see this go today. Share your name to the link and your links to the chat. Maybe it's a small enough group that we'll just be able to shout out, but if not, go ahead and use the raise your hand mechanism down there on the group at the bottom of your screen. Robin is here. Robin Woolner is going to monitor the chat line. So if there's any questions, just put them in there and we'll try and address them. If you're going to speak to the conversation, let's just go to it and raise your hand and Robin or I will call on you. John, we'll start with a statement. I think it's pre-recorded. It's a 30-minute statement, and then there's others who may jump on the call, like Linda Gibbs or Finian Makepeace. Delaney is here. I'm going to call on her to answer, to begin striking up the conversation, and then just open it up to everybody to as they're so inspired. So John, Marcia, where are you? Please unmute yourself. There you go, I unmuted you. Would you please frame the conversation in the context of ecosystems restoration in Los Angeles as you see fit?
Will you make me a co-host, or can I share the screen? Did you?
Yeah, you should be able to screen share.
I can do it. All right.
For those who don't know, I represent also the Birdhouse, which has just become the first urban-based ecosystem restoration camp. And maybe some of you don't even know that John is the founder of this global movement where there's 37 camps around the world, and we're honored to be one of them. And we can talk more about that.
Well, here we go. Ready?
Yeah.
It's really great to have the opportunity to talk with you. I don't want to talk too long. I really want to have a conversation. And I'm extremely grateful for this opportunity, for the Birdhouse, for you joining us, and for the Common Land Foundation and the Mustard Seed Trust, which make it possible for me to continue to do this work. One of the things that I think is very important is value. We have been valuing things higher than ecological function. We've even taken this further, and in the literature, which is discussing, for instance, ecology or environmental issues or climate change, we've begun to talk about something which I think is fundamentally false. We talk about ecosystem services. But in my research, I don't see any ecosystem services. I see functional or dysfunctional ecosystems. And what I've noticed is that most people talk about ecosystem services, but what they really need to be talking about is ecosystem function. Because the ecosystem services are derivatives. They're secondary systems that emerge from the primary systems. And if you focus on the secondary systems, it's very possible that you'll destroy the primary systems. So understanding that the oxygenated atmosphere, the freshwater system, the soil fertility, and the biodiversity, these are fundamental primary aspects of life. And computers and airplanes and cameras and computers are derivatives that we've fashioned from the materials. And if we look at the difference of these, what is the difference between this? The first difference is that the ecological function is part of an eternal system. It's a question of time. It's about time. And the things are very short-term things. They're ephemeral. We make them, we love them, we think they're really useful, but they grow old and they deteriorate and they crumble. And they go into the trash heap. And if we're not careful and very carefully recycle them, they ooze toxic substances often into the air and the water and the soil. So we need to change our values. We need to understand that ecosystem function is the basis of life, and things are just convenient, interesting things that we fashion, but they're ephemeral. And what we have to see then is that the outcomes which we're experiencing are not accidental. They're the result of the choices that we have made. So when we elevate things higher than life itself, we start to destroy the ecological function on the planet. If we elevate things higher than life itself, the eternal systems that have created and constantly filtered and continuously renewed the atmosphere, the freshwater system, the fertile soils, and the biodiversity, then we are creating a perverse incentive to degrade the systems we depend on for life. It's a huge mistake. And it's connected to our economic thinking. We're imagining that we know what money is, that we know when we're transacting things that this fiat currencies that we're using are real. But in this system, the GDP system, the global economic system, what we actually find is that the ecological function, the basis of life, is zero in the GDP economy. Can it be true that the atmosphere is worthless? That the soil fertility is nothing? That the biodiversity is just about aesthetics? It's false. And all of our things are worth less than life. Life is eternal. We are stardust. And I think when we begin to consider these things, we go to a higher level of consciousness. When we believe in things, we're actually very constrained. And we're operating often from self-interest, and we're operating from greed. And I think what we really need to be doing is acting from generosity and from knowledge. After spending most of the last 3 decades studying function and dysfunction in terrestrial ecosystems around the world, I've come to California. I've been trapped by the COVID virus and travel restrictions and the difficulty of moving about and the need to stay somewhat isolated from other people. And I've observed what's happening in California. And what I'm seeing is that the huge sequoias and redwood trees and the magnificent forests are the highest expression of evolution and evolutionary succession that exist anywhere on the planet. But tragically, they're only 3 to 5% of what they once were at the climax equilibrium. So there are remnants of these amazing systems. And then there's evidence that they were once much more magnificent. And what I saw was that when the moisture evaporates off the Pacific Ocean, it comes in, and this forested system along the coastal forests is the first stage in processing this moisture. And the reason that this enormous climax equilibrium emerged here is because it's such a fertile and amazing place. And that moisture was absorbed not simply by the root systems, and the consideration of moisture should not be simply rainfall, because when that moisture comes in as clouds, as fog, then it's absorbed by the leaf systems as much as it's coming up from the roots. And it creates its own microclimate below the canopy. And in these giant systems, the height of the canopy is over 100 meters. So over 350 feet. And that system then begins to process that water and absorb it into biological life. And it's respirated. And we are in symbiosis with the system. And I've been all over the world, and I notice that what's happening here in California is it's the climate's changing. It's changing toward a Mediterranean climate. But this is not what it should be. If the system reaches its climax equilibrium, it's more like a rainforest. And if we push it toward a Mediterranean climate, then it's going in the same direction as the Middle East, North Africa. And this is extremely dangerous, not only for California, but this system affects the entire continental United States, certainly everything until the continental divide, but even beyond. And what I found was that the climax equilibrium, the remnants that we can see of the climax equilibrium, are only perhaps 3 to 5% of what they once were. And what's so terrifying to me about that is that the water is in the biomass. The water isn't just in the rivers and the lakes. It's in the biomass, and those huge trees that are over 350 feet tall, they are 70% water at least. And this, if we're only 3 to 5% of the climax equilibrium, that means we're not storing the water, and that already 95 to 97% of that water has been lost. And the physics changes when you alter the earth systems and the biological systems, means that basic functions like physics or gravity begin to take over. So the physics changes are when the solar radiation directly hits the surface of the earth. The temperature is elevated by enormous amounts, 10, 15, 20 degrees centigrade. I found 45 degrees centigrade changes, but that's an extreme system. and gravity takes over. So instead of having vast amounts of organic material and the exudates from bacteria and fungal and insects and holding the soil together, you get erosion. So what happens in those situations? Drought, flooding, mudslides, giant wildfires. So basically we're seeing it play out, but it plays out over a different time frame than a single lifetime. Human impacts, the major human impacts in this biome are from only less than 200 years, really. So if you compare to the Middle East, the destruction began 12,000 years ago. But here, native indigenous peoples cared for and tended these forests for 15,000 years at least. So it wasn't an accident when colonial settlers came here and looked at the land and found it magnificent. It was not only that was the evolutionary climax, that's true, but it was the understanding that the indigenous people had that all life was sacred, that it wasn't available for human beings to just take whatever they wanted. And strangely, that's very close to the Judeo-Christian Islamic cosmology, which says that human beings emerged in paradise, but then they sinned. And here in California, the indigenous people worshipped nature, and so they didn't destroy it. But then, when we switched our economy to believe in materialism, we built up huge amounts of material things, but we also destroyed the natural systems. So what I've been looking at is all the many problems that I'm seeing. I'm seeing enormous material accumulation to some people here. They're billionaires, a billionaire class. And then there are millions of people who are failing in this existing economy. And it's very hard for me to appreciate and understand how to enjoy privilege if I have to step over someone or see someone who's miserable in the street. And it creates this kind of tension. So I've been thinking about function and dysfunction for a very long time. And I'm seeing a great deal of dysfunction, and I'm seeing the results of that dysfunction here. And I'm also seeing the height of functionality, but it's only a remnant of 3 to 5% of its potential. So when we understand that everything is interrelated, that there is no possibility that you can consider problems individually. The only way to solve the problems that we're facing is by linking them all together, because they're all part of our greater problems. So mainly for a long time, I've been studying about biodiversity and biomass and soil fertility and the relationships between microbiology and biology, other parts of biology, plant biology. But I look here in California and I see not only massive disruptions to, for instance, the hydrological cycle or the biodiversity loss or the soil fertility, toxicity, some other things, different dysfunctions emerging. But I'm seeing that there are people who are hungry. There are people that are homeless. There are many, many unemployed people. And then there are many people who are underemployed, who are employed more like indentured servants who just keep working. They work harder than anybody else, and they get less than anybody else. Now that's a clue, too. And what I've seen in studying ecology tells me, and also in permaculture, I really wasn't involved in permaculture. I was studying ecology, but then the permaculture world kind of got into my frame of study, and I thought, oh, these are really interesting. And in permaculture, they have something called stacking functions. And these stacking functions are about symbiosis. They're about multidimensional symbiotic systems. And I started to see that that's really what we need to do to understand and to use in order to design the changes that we'll need to make in order to have functional systems. And so I think it's also partly the COVID and partly the collapse of the economic system because of the closures. And there's also something about the political system which is seriously dysfunctional. So I started wondering, how can we deal with this? What can we do when I see people who are hungry, when I see people who are homeless, when I see people who are unemployed and they don't know what they're doing? Or I even see people who are employed, but their work is kind of meaningless. And I mean, this can go very high. You could be very highly paid to do something that's not really needed. And I realized that what's missing is meaning. So back to considering function and dysfunction in terrestrial ecosystems. First of all, I think that it's critical to restore the hydrological cycle in California, since this moisture coming off the Pacific Ocean and the huge potential, that's what we see with the climax equilibrium, is the potential that this is huge. This is what's necessary, and that has to be the central intention for human civilization. But so many things are stopping us from focusing on exactly what we need to do. So we need, besides stacking functions, there's something else that I've been learning, which is about evolutionary succession. That you really can't jump too far ahead. You have to realize that functionality is coming in stages. Quite a long time ago, cell division began. And when cell division began, these were very simple organisms, and they were the first organisms, and they lived and died very rapidly. And now, everywhere you go in the world, you find bacteria. But you don't only find bacteria, you find everything. You find this enormous biodiversity. And so this biodiversity, the differentiation and speciation, leads to infinite potential variety in genetics. This is quite an extraordinary outcome. But it depends on those earliest simple organisms because they're all interconnected. And that's what our DNA is, because we're not only related to all other human beings, we're related to all other living things on the earth. And what I've been thinking about now that I've been in California, and especially talking with the birdhouse and with the other camps that are setting up in California, is that this is an enormous task, but it's a task which we can do with joy and which brings us meaning and takes away a lot of the confusion that we have. And it starts with understanding we're going to have to deal with all these layers. We can't just go and restore the forests. We can't plant trees only. We have to restore human health and human function. We have to heal. So I started thinking about what's happening. I know that there's going to be more and more unemployment, more and more homelessness, more and more hunger. It's already here. And there are people who don't have health care and who are ill. And we need to figure this out. But in the concept of succession, I think the first one is probably hunger. And so we better feed the hungry. If we feed the hungry, then they'll be in a position to do something different. They won't be a drain on human civilization and on society. And so how can we do that? I thought we should come together and we should build central kitchens. And we've been looking at that. And it's definitely possible. And we should then connect the central kitchens to the producers of organic and biodynamic food so that we have the highest nutrient density. And when we do that, we can start to influence the type of agriculture that's going on, because we have a lot of industrial agriculture, which is destroying the basic natural fertility of the earth. It's creating nitrate layers, salt layers in the soils. It's compacting the soils. It's leaving persistent organic pollutants, which are carcinogenic. It's going into the water. It's terrible. 0 is the only allowable amount of toxic substances in our food. If we come together and we build central kitchens, then we can feed all the people. And at the same time, we can improve the agricultural system by collaborating with people who want to do regenerative agriculture. And I started thinking about the other successional things. I was thinking about building central kitchens, and I realized in order to build central kitchens, you need to have a lot of tools and equipment together to build kitchens. So we could make creator spaces where we have all the tools necessary for metalworking and mechanics and woodworking. And we can go further and have craft, and we can prepare our own ceramics, and we can have industrial sewing. And I was thinking about, well, some of the homeless people that I've seen in Hollywood and in other parts of California, they really need a shower. So we could use those creator spaces to make showers and saunas. Saunas use less water. We can also make gray water recycling systems for all the water too. And then I thought, well, we should have laundries where the homeless people can do their laundry. And then gradually, as people who, they're different, I noticed also that there are different kinds of homeless people. There are homeless people with serious psychological problems or extreme addiction issues, substance abuse issues. And then there are homeless who just are underemployed and are paid badly. And they're the hardest working people anywhere. Well, gradually, I think we could, when people are in a community, they're well dressed. They can take a shower and a sauna when they need it, and they have really good organic and biodynamic food. They're in much better shape. So as soon as we get to the point where we're feeding the people, they're going to be feeding others because they're going to realize that they've been empowered, and they're going to be working in the creator spaces, and they're going to be recycling the gray water site systems, and they're going to be building nursery systems to grow plants and food, and they're going to be able to go out and create and enlarge ecosystem restoration camps. And in doing that, they're going to be able to replant the forests which have been destroyed. And that these communities could be joyous, and these communities could be wonderful places for healing for individuals and healing for the planet. That's where I want to be. And I hope that that's where we all want to be. So what I've seen is that there are these feedback loops. And once we start doing these things, they create a positive, a virtuous circle. And they replace the sort of cycle of collapse that we're experiencing. And the fact is, we know how to restore large-scale degraded ecosystems. We know how to lower surface temperatures on the planet to reduce human impact on climate changes. We know how to restore hydrology. We know how to restore biodiversity. And these are more valuable than buying and selling things and pretending that material things are what protect us. What protects us and what gives us life is the oxygenated atmosphere, the hydrological cycle, the soil fertility, and the biodiversity. So if we put this back, if we make this right, then we change the course of human history. And of course, this can't only be done in California, but what's interesting is when we talk about this in any other part of the world, the people also respond. So now 4 years ago, we started talking about, let's just do this. Let's stop asking for permission from the United Nations or the governments or something. What they represent us. So if we choose, and they have created some kind of bureaucratic inertia that makes it impossible to do anything, then why don't we just do it? And when we do it, we're going to change ourselves. We're going to change the ecology in all in positive ways. And we can change the economy because we can prove very rapidly that ecological function is more valuable than things. Once we get to the point where we understand that ecological function is the basis of life and is vastly more valuable than material things, then it will become the basis of our economy. And that economy will be much bigger than the material economy. And that economy will be much more fairly distributed among all life. It's in benefit of every living thing, not just human beings. And we can simplify. We don't need so much stuff. We need functional ecosystems. We need love, time, health. Those are the things that we need. And I think we're at the point where this is now possible. Certainly in my own research, I've seen we can restore large-scale degraded ecosystems, and through the efforts of ordinary people without much in the way. I mean, we need some knowledge, but we don't need a lot of new machines and equipment and stuff. We need people to understand this. It's consciousness. The landscape reflects our consciousness. So I'm really looking forward to having a deep conversation about what we could do to revitalize California, the United States, North America, the Earth. And we can do this in an ecological way, we can do this in a moral way, and we can do this in a purposeful and meaningful way, which makes our lives completely understandable.
Thank you.
John, thank you for that. I don't know if he just signed off.
What's that?
Are you still there, John?
I'm here. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes. Well, that was beautiful, and I think it would be great to just hear popcorn from people. Raise your hand, and we'll just comment on what we heard there. I found it inspiring. Peter Allen, my brother.
Yeah, thank you. I did come in a little late, but one of the key phrases I heard was ecological function is more valuable than the market realizes. And then you, John, you made the statement, John Liu made the statement that we can prove that it is, that ecological function is more valuable than things, basically. Consumerism is what I understood it to mean. Could you elaborate on that a little bit and just how that might actually happen? You know, I think we're all in agreement, but you're kind of preaching to the choir here. So I'm wondering, you know, how you would, what actual steps those are.
Well, let's let other people talk, and I'll come back to that. And you can also find my my communications. We can have a private conversation as well.
Excuse me?
I think it's best if other people talk, since I had such a long rant there, but I'll come back to you and answer that specifically, or we can do it offline as well.
Oh, okay. All right. Thanks.
To reiterate Peter's question, from what I understand, Peter, if I get it right, you're asking how can we prove that ecological function is more valuable than the market or any things?
Yeah, that's
possession?
that's what John Liu said, and so I was just asking him to elaborate on it. I mean, it's something that I would like to see and like to see happen. I think it happens somewhat on a very small scale, but I guess I don't understand how it would happen. I see a lot of inertia pushing against that, and so that's why I was asking about it. But
You mean,
let others speak.
yeah, sure. Anybody who wants to speak to that. Is that Alexa? Alexa, please. Yeah.
Hi guys, I'm sorry, I was in another box. I was looking for the link to Chef Jose Andre, who has been working with Homeboy Industries during COVID-19. So far, they've served over 175,000 people with multiple kitchens, putting formerly incarcerated, gang-affiliated, homeless, you name it, to work through the social enterprises and making this happen. As I was listening, I was nodding my head like crazy, like, oh my God, because there are multiple projects that are taking pieces of this. And so I'm like, like getting very excited here. And the county and the city want to take land and they want to make something sustainable happen. They want to take kids from the foster system. There's now more diversion instead of incarceration for our youth, and they're closing down the juvenile halls, the camps, and the probation centers. And I was involved in one that was going to be at Camp Gonzales in Malibu. All of this is to say, I'm not sure what's going on there because the nonprofits and the people involved, it's shifted, but it was going to be imagined as a huge like land opportunity to grow food, have kitchens, do job training, and have homeless and impacted youth and young adults have a place to live. So there would also be a dormitory style. So all of what I'm saying is that I know of bits and pieces where people are working from their skill sets, but what I'm hearing from you guys is something that I haven't heard before on how to actually, create the ecosystems. So I'm the voice of like working with the men and women and the children who need this and are ready to work. So I'm just going to be quiet and listen and just thank you guys and help however I can if it's helpful.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. So anybody else who wants to speak up, raise your hand. In the meantime, I'll confirm that what you're saying about the probation system is a great place to start. My brother Peter here and I started a thing at Camp Holton in 1994. It was a garden training program for teenage prisoners that was very successful for about 3 years and funded by the USDA. So there's a beautiful model for the openness of public and private and nonprofit to work together. Yeah, Emma.
How do you raise your hand? You do it like this, or is there some device?
There's a hand raise on the chat, I think, or participants. Look down at the bottom.
Bottom of the chat.
At any rate, go ahead.
Well, can I just find out how to raise the hand? Because
On the participants at the bottom, it says raise hand.
participants at the bottom. Okay.
Raise hand.
I don't see anything that says raise hand. I don't have that. Do you see it?
All right, so I'll just explain it quickly. Click on participants.
Okay.
Another window to the right will open up.
Right.
Then scroll down to your name.
Okay.
Then highlight your name. And it's just say raise hand. If you look at the bottom of the name list, it says 3 buttons: invite, mute me, and raise hand.
Okay, thank you.
My hand.
All right, now my hand's raised.
There, my hand's raised. I'll raise mine. Little.
Okay.
When you're done.
Hi, everybody.
That was it. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you. So we all want to do something and about this, but it's vast and confusing. And I think we need local plans. Is there such a thing, John? Do you have any kind of I don't know what, for example, I don't know what the ecosystem should be like here. I mean, how you say, I was really surprised to hear you say it should be a rainforest. Do you mean here in Los Angeles?
Well, yeah, it's, so Southern California and Northern California are not exactly the same, but what we have here is, and all the way up and down the coast. So it's really from Alaska to Tierra del Fuego. The moisture coming off the Pacific Ocean flows inland, and
Yeah.
it has to be captured and begin to charge the lower hydrological cycle.
Mm.
So if that doesn't happen, then the rest of the country is going to be, well, look to the east of you. You know, so it becomes worse and worse and worse because you haven't captured that moisture.
Right.
And then the other part of that is that the thermic drafts, when you raise the surface temperature, it pushes the moisture into the upper atmosphere. There it doesn't condense, doesn't precipitate, it moves away. So that is a physics change. It's a massive change in, and it's human based. So we did that. We changed the temperature, it changed the atmospheric layering for the moisture, and then it doesn't condense and doesn't precipitate. So when we understand these things, and these things are known,
Yes.
so it's important to take what we do know and apply it. But I think the real reason is why. You know, when and Peter's question about how do we prove this is really what I'm keen to do. So all of the ecosystem restoration camps are taking ordinary people, gathering to get them together and restoring ecological function in specific spaces. And when they do that, they're completely different from all their neighbors. And the neighbors look at them and go, oh, look at that. Why do they have trees? Why do they have productive farms? Why do they have water? And so once we start to show this, you know, to me, I've already studied it for 30 years, so it's proven to me. I see it in Africa or in Europe or South America or Central America or North America or Asia, and it's always the same. So to me, it's proven. And I have done my best, but I guess I'm not a very good communicator because all the times I've been talking about this, it hasn't really totally changed the world. But I can't even say that nobody listens because there are a lot of people listen. But how many people change their lives? That's
I think John is being humble because he's participated in changing the land use policies of African nations, and Egypt being one of them, and has studied what has happened in China. In case you didn't catch the films, that alone is proof to me that this can be done. These things are man-made and they can be assisted to be restored. I think one of the problems we have here is that in Los Angeles, everybody wants to restore it to the sort of disturbed state that we knew it when we came. And, you know, what the potential of California is rainforest. I mean, you only have to look back to the Paleolithic to see that the dinosaurs are a quagmire of tar that's from that era when everything was megafauna and megaflora.
Or Hancock Park, John. You know,
Yeah.
down there with the big trees there, and it's 10, 15 degrees cooler under there, and you can feel the moisture in the air. So you can, I mean, it's not a rainforest, but you could see if there was enough of that, we could have easily become one if we had enough of those big trees.
And, you know, not to sound too pie in the sky, as in like Paleolithic megafauna and megaflora, but just evidently, and John maybe can corroborate this, in India, they found through empiric measures that it only takes about 280 acres of greening to affect rainfall.
Oh.
Does
that sound right to you, John?
Well, I want to believe it.
Me too.
But I want to hear what Dennis Washburn.
Please speak up.
Raising his hand, so I
If I can just interject, how many of you have heard of the phrase or the word anthropause?
Yes.
Crickets. Recently, I mean, at the beginning of the COVID event, Wired magazine wrote a story, and you can look it up, about anthropause. And it's obviously the human race on pause, as if you were clicking your remote control on the control that we love to have in our environment. It would be worth your while looking at that story. It was mostly focused on the fact that with all the folks forced to stay home, the traffic reduced, the road kills reduced because we're not on the streets going willy-nilly through animal preserves and things like that. We've got animals, literally lions in the Santa Monica Mountains, that are finding their way into the human territory because they're not being threatened or chased out, and they're actually, after the Woolsey fire that we had in 2018 in the Santa Monica Mountains, they're looking for habitat essentially and survival. I bring it up because as John mentioned, without using the term, we're on pause right now because of COVID-19 and the economic collapse that's come from it. And when we ultimately, with a vaccine or therapies or whatever, relieve the pressure that made us put the world on pause, and it's the world, it's not just the United States, it's going to make a significant change in the way, or could make a significant change in the way we do business. But I wanted to actually speak to the timing issue, because if we release the pause button and we choose to go back to what we thought was normal, which John has clearly shown is abnormal because it's not dealing with the ecological and ecosystem function aspects of how we live. It's going to be important to find people who know what to do next. John, you've listed a number of steps, which I've copied down and I agree with entirely, but there isn't a lot of time when we come out of this anthropause that we're in. So I want to make you all aware, if you aren't, that the American Dust Bowl created an entire system in the United States of what was then soil conservation districts and a national soil conservation service, just like the Forest Service or the National Park Service and so forth. So there is a natural resources conservation service of the USDA. They get a big budget. There are local delivery systems, which goes to the issue that several of you have already raised, and that is we want to do something where we have at least some modicum of control. So if you look in your phone book, if you have one, or look it up on the internet, see if you have a resource conservation district where you live in the United States. Mine is the Resource Conservation District of the Santa Monica Mountains. I'm a member of that board of directors since 1986. And we've done some pretty interesting things here in the Santa Monica Mountains, including watershed management as a concept. And over the past 30 years, as John, you've mentioned, it takes to try to come up with solutions. We don't have 30 years. We have to do stuff now. And it would be great to borrow the infrastructure that's already in place and correct the kind of the misadministration of a substantial amount of funding that deals with soil, water, energy, and atmospheric conservation. So I would encourage the bunch of us to get together another time and talk about how we can mobilize that infrastructure and that budget in the U.S. Federal budget and the state budgets. In California, the budget for the conservation districts and the conservation service in our state is about $400 million. And that's because it should be more, because we have a lot of square miles and a lot of people, but it's still a meaningful amount of money, and it could be mobilized very quickly to deal with not just agriculture or range management or forest practices, all of which are involved in soil, water, energy, and atmospheric access.
Delaney would like to say something. Do you want to?
A long time. I would just encourage us to do that. That's a very specific thing we can each do in our homes in America.
Beautiful. Yeah, I hope you put your information contact in the chat there, Dennis. Thank
I
you.
did early on, yeah.
So Delaney has done work with, well, I'll let you introduce yourself. You need to unmute.
Sorry, I thought you were doing that. Hi, group. My name is Delaney Ellis. I live up in Ventura County. I've been making documentary films about sustainable ag for 20 years. And my last film, which had a spin-off social action campaign. So the last 10 years of my life have been on a film called Ground Operations, Battlefields to Farm Fields. So I've been working with combat vets who have come back from the war front and are transitioning into different forms of agriculture. And while I'm sure there are plenty of them who are in conventional ag and, you know, they went home to the farms that they grew up on, there's a huge contingency of combat veterans who have never grown up on a farm, don't know from anything, but were called to the land. And many of them, the ones I meet, the hundreds of them and stuff, thousands that I meet, are for the most part organic or regenerative, because many of them have had such a toxic chemical load from the war that they cannot really be around chemicals. So for any number of reasons, they're headed in the right direction. And so a few quick things to say is, I know there's some vets who were working on things like farms in a shipping container that were outfitted where you could bring it into a disaster situation, or like this, you know, downtown LA, which is like a disaster situation. And it had its own solar, and it had its own water catchment, and it had aquaponics for the things, so that literally you come up and you flap out the tops and the this and the that, and within 6 weeks you've got lettuce that you're starting to cultivate and stuff. So and a number of them who are urban farmers, taking over like an old crack parking lot and putting up a greenhouse and turning that into a mini farm for their communities. So I want to just throw into more the labor and brawn and brain and visionary, the combat veteran population blew my mind in terms of what capable people they are, and how much fun they are, and how they, I used to say at screenings, you know, they eat obstacles for breakfast. So they don't stop easily. And they love having this new mission of feeding America. So without any more pitch in that area, that's where I live and what I've been involved with. And from when I started shooting the film 10 years ago, and it was 12 guys on a farm tour, there are now over 20,000 members of the Farmer Veteran Coalition. We use my film to help build the movement.
Yeah, I'd say check out the movie. It's inspiring, and
it's on Amazon, so it's easily found. Ground Operation, and I'm in the chat line.
Would you put that film again, Delaney?
Ground Operations.
It's in the chat there.
Battlefields to Farm Fields, and it is in the chat line.
Super inspiring.
But I raised my hand because it occurred to me that, you know, you want to collaborate with people. You don't want to have to start designing the wheel all over again. You want to collaborate with organizations who are already doing remarkable, wonderful things and have people on the ground. So there's a whole effort about restoring the LA River going on. And that's right near where all the strength of the homeless area is. So that's a connection point to think about. And Volunteers of America, which is all over the country, does a tremendous amount of work, both with veterans, but primarily with the homeless, and setting up resources and helping them move into life again. So Volunteers of America is a real good organization to check out. And then the other thing I wanted to say was that if what you're looking at is cumulative, like with LA, you know, the gardening movement, and especially with the pandemic, the home gardening movement is like a growth industry, you'll excuse the pun. People are going crazy with growing stuff, and that's something to capitalize on. But the people who are on the streets, you got a long way to go before you're going to say anything to them that has any meaning in their life in a reality sense. So, but I think that what Johnny Allen is doing in terms of creating micro community gardens and stuff around neighborhoods and sending that out so that you capture properties, government properties that are under power lines, so they're not putting anything else there, or church lawns that all they do is grow lawn and mow it. You know, it's a perfect community supported agriculture. Your whole audience, your whole market shows up every Sunday, you know, and they got all this lawn you could be farming on. So there's all these opportunities within downtown LA in parking lots and on rooftops and all over the place to be doing more and more gardening. And it creates community. It breaks down racial barriers. When people from different cultural backgrounds start working together in community gardens, pretty soon they're realizing they're both using cilantro, and you know, the conversations start and it starts going. So I'm here to speak for small but really effective and growing urban ag networks.
Excellent. Beautiful. Phoenix has had his hand up, so I'd like to hear from him.
Oh, cool. So yeah, thank you so much for doing this. I'm so glad to have watched the video beforehand and learn about these huge projects that are happening. I was super inspired, especially because really I have that same vision. And you mentioned in the film, like, you know, you started putting it out there, and come to find out like 20,000 people came forward and said, hey, I have the same vision. And so I'm also in the process of making a documentary, and it's really just following the step-by-step process of creating a new land-based community. And there's a huge opportunity to work with tribal nations out in the southwest part of the country. They're really excited about, you know, these different technologies, and especially with hemp and everything that hemp can do, along with food production, and really having a background in you know, some pretty intense addiction, along with mental health issues. You know, I can really speak into even being homeless for many years. I was also a veteran, and or am a veteran, and really understanding the need for community, along with healing arts and like a spiritual practice. And you know, I think even having like a healing arts university. And so I'm really working on, you know, bringing this huge vision to life, but also seeing how we can take immediate steps. There's a beautiful project happening in West Hollywood called Trieste, and they basically modeled this town in Italy, and that this town has the lowest mental health issues in the world. They were studied, and this woman, I just interviewed her, and her name is Carrie Morrison, and she basically took all these people from the government. She took police officers, judges, all to Trieste so that they could witness the work that they're doing. And from that, she eventually got a pilot program started and was granted $116 million to build Trieste in West Hollywood. This was funded by the Department of Mental Health. And so there's a lot of focus around, you know, community and giving people purpose is really a huge thing. And also, there's no authority, another big component. So instead of people being having like a crisis and then having the police called it, instead of calling police, they call peer specialists. So a peer specialist is somebody that has lived experience of extreme states and understands from personal experience, how to relate with that person. And so saying that SB 808 was just passed here in California. And with that, there's going to be lots of funding to start more pure RAN organizations. And so we can start new community centers instead of building more psychiatric hospitals and medicating people and just continuing that cycle. We can build, they're called pure RAN respites, basically a recovery house for homeless people to come and kind of get off the street for a while and have access to different kinds of healing modalities with peer specialists. And I think within that setting, people can find resources to, places outside of the city possibly. And I think we can even, build a pure RAN respite that's land-based. It doesn't have to necessarily be built in the city like they currently are. So I think there's a lot of potential with the new law that has passed and kind of helping the people that are more in need.
Excellent. Beautiful. John.
I would just like to add something because I didn't put it into the presentation, but maybe I should have. I think we should really do this perfectly. And I think it's wonderful that all these other groups are working and we should learn from them and collaborate with them at all times. But I also feel like they're overwhelmed by the scale of the problem. And so more people need to be engaged in this. And what I was thinking is, like, why don't we choose a place? People were telling me like there's Toys R Us or something like this that is empty and ruined and laying around. And why don't we find a place like this and just try it, and create a creator space, bring all the tools and all the machines and get retired people who are highly skilled, like the engineers and from the aviation and racing and different places, and bring them there and like, let's make the perfect shop, and then take it away from any kind of idea of transactional economics. It's just like, we're going to solve these problems here, and we're going to build the gray water systems. We're going to build the central kitchen here, and let's make a stage and put a tent over it and put big speakers and amplifiers, and let's have music there and movie night and really like start to make this happen. And then that can be duplicated. So there's all over the country, there are all these shopping centers with their dangerous places, covered with plywood, and you don't want to go anywhere near them. You like see them and like run, but that's the place where we could go there. And let's get the veterans, let's get the central kitchen people, let's get the veterans, let's get all of the people who are learning how to do this to advise and to help and participate. Then we're scaling. And then let's take the people who heal themselves. Now they're cleaned up and they're psychologically ready to go. Let's say, would you like to go out to the forests that burned down? The hundreds, how many millions of acres were lost? Why don't we go there, build and I was thinking about this, the camp idea. We started looking into it, and there are two types of camps which are allowed without too much coding or anything. One is agricultural camps and the other is forest camps. So we could then be like bringing the people, and what about basic incomes? Could we talk about basic incomes for these people? So if they clean themselves up, they're in a community, they're healthy, they're trained, in creating gray water systems. They're trained in nursery systems. They're trained in planting out forests. That's perfect. We need them. And, you know, so suddenly from being discarded by the society, they're the heroes leading us to the promised land. That's what we need to do.
Yeah. You know, I see that possibility, and I hear that, you know, you can just go out and ask anybody who you might know who has a storefront that's available. It's amazing how much the money is available when a vision is spoken. And, you know, I'm opening up to this group has all the potential to just define something that can get the ball rolling, you know, like what John just described. And that, you know, if anybody knows anybody with land, I know, you know, we're dealing with somebody who's 80 acres outside of Los Angeles, and we're doing it in little plots throughout our canyon here in Beechwood. But the funding really is available if that's something that stops you. You know, it's an abundant world of people who are looking for money, looking for places to put their money for a project like this. And if you have any doubts about your future is secured when you're of service for others.
We need a shared intention. I think we need to state that we're going to work together to make this happen, because we are all wandering around with all kinds of ideas, but we're not actually coalescing together to get it done. And what I saw in the ecosystem restoration camps movement is like, if you just present this concept, I don't know very many people. I don't know. I've never been to Guatemala. They have one of the most fantastic ecosystem restoration camps in Guatemala now, because they're so ready for this. And this is happening all over the world now. So and I think California has a reputation for being like a leader in innovation, and everybody follows what California does. So let's make this happen here.
I wanted to say it's right. Like when we start visioning these things, most of the time it happens when we're out picking fruit or you know, doing soil sponge collective work, which we do on Saturdays. So, you know, anybody interested in just furthering the conversation, most of us are LA based, and we can put in work on Nikki's land up there in Malibu. We can put in work on any one of the 15 plots that the Birdhouse is working on while we discuss these things. Hollywood Orchard can host conversations while picking fruit. So it doesn't have to stop with just like getting off this call. Everybody shared their information here, and really it's an invitation to continue dreaming while doing this stuff, because you just get so much juice out of, you know, sponging the soil and gardening and harvesting. So yeah, you know, the Birdhouse link is on there. You can get in touch with me or the Birdhouse. And I don't know, does anybody have projects that they've seen that are successful that are like this? Dennis? You have to unmute.
Had to get unmuted. I've been working with Archie and Hugo on the idea of building a system that can deal with a multivariate equation. I know that John is saying basically think simply, act locally, but dream big. The timing issue is really the problem with all of us, and the budget issue is always a difficult thing. Our city of Calabasas actually owns 12.5 acres at the intersection of Old Topanga Canyon Boulevard or actually Old Topanga Canyon Road and Mulholland Highway. And that's got some really interesting historic interest in and of itself. Well, the fire that occurred here in 2016 burned down the headquarters that we were giving for $1 a year to the Mountains Restoration Trust. And we're now at a point where the Mountains Restoration Trust and the tree people of Los Angeles that have a really interesting campus on Coldwater at Mulholland Drive in Los Angeles. They've joined forces, and there could be an opportunity here to use the systems and software that Hugo and Archie are talking about to compress into a multivariate equation, so you can determine what should you spend your next 50,000 or 500,000 or 50 million on, and find the actual outcomes that you need to have to prove to Angelenos that this can and should and must work in order to deal with this business that we're talking about. And interestingly, this property is called Headwaters Corner because it's the actual headwaters of the LA River. So if you dump a gallon of water and there weren't any friction in the backyard of the Headwaters Corner property, it would wind up in Long Beach down the LA River, which goes through downtown LA. And LA has determined they're going to spend $1 billion in restoring the Los Angeles River to its historic usefulness, compressed again, from 1784 when LA was founded to today, where we treat it basically as a wastewater stream to dump water into Long Beach, and we're not capturing that water. There's a whole bunch of things that can be educated right here in our little town at Headwaters Corner. Where
What are you doing with the 12.5 acres, if you don't mind?
Well, right now it's in the process of being restored. There's a master plan that we've put together in Calabasas, the city, in order to deal with that. And we just had an election, and we have 2 new council members, one new and one passed.
When you say restored, what does it mean?
And I would say that I've been talking with Hugo and Archie about literally applying the product that they have, which is incredible, to dealing with the multivariate equation that I'm trying to describe to you as we speak. The stuff is simple when you look at it from 30,000 feet or maybe from a satellite, but it's really complex when you have to deal with budgets and politics and social constraints and fire and traffic management and school closures. This site that I'm telling you about is actually on a 2-mile stretch of Mulholland Highway that has 6,000 students in 9 schools, and none of those assets is being used meaningfully now, yet we're going to be paying for them for the next 20, 30 years because of the bond financing and so forth. So, I mean, there's a whole bunch of elements that need to be put into the equation. And from what I've seen that Archie and Hugo are working on, that is the perfect place to stuff all that information and then grind out the answers to what you need to get done. And then you go and see the people who have the money. And that can be replicated all over the world, clearly. But if you can do it in Calabasas, you can, where the Kardashians and,
I think this
everybody else is setting a reputation for us, and instead those folks can literally help us solve the problem. I mean, Kanye West lived in Calabasas, and he's now in Hidden Hills across the freeway from us now. And he wanted to build dome houses, and he built them for homeless shelters. And then the county of Los Angeles made him take them down. So everybody wants to do something.
Jesse, do you have something to add here?
Who are you talking to?
Jesse.
I did. Thank you. Hello, everybody. A pleasure to make your acquaintance. Jeanette, Jessica, Alexa, Phoenix, nice to see you guys here. John, thank you. Johnny, thank you. I wanted to offer this. It seems even inside of a pool of great minds looking for a good question to ask, and being familiar with this space for a long time myself, it can be daunting and overwhelming. I think from what I'm refining myself in this is that there's cultural and environmental and economic and geopolitical and political and environmental constraints that determine the type of project that can work appropriately for any specific area. And I don't think that any one model can be templatized and applied, but a tool set that can ask the relevant questions in each of the domains that need to be addressed in order to have a cohesive approach to answering a challenge might be, from what I'm hearing and with everyone's skill set that I've seen, the most appropriate application of a group field, outcome. Like, and it's not to say that any one model works everywhere. I think that colonialistic, mentality and templatized housing and codes and universal building codes, all these types of things have failed utterly because they've taken one concept and kind of sprayed it on something. But that if you provide or if we can collaboratively create a document of questions in progression of approach to addressing these issues in a specific space, the cultural and environmental and temperate and economic, variables will settle out and still provide a community an opportunity to realistically approach these otherwise horribly, overwhelmingly, and daunting challenges. So I just wanted to offer that to the group, that perhaps a template for the inquiry of how groups, wherever you are, can approach a holistic model is what I would offer. And then the closest thing that I've personally seen as a working example of that in motion was, and I put a link there, but I'd like to offer it, was the Occidental Arts and Ecology Center. And what this group of people did was they bought the Farallons Institute in Sonoma County, and they created a community land trust to stop the speculative ownership of the land. And then they put the remaining property, this is an 80-acre parcel, into a conservation land trust that allowed for grant funding to restore the ecosystem of the land that they were on. And then they launched a nonprofit that was renting the space from the LLC of the buyers who had originally bought the Farallons Institute. And the nonprofit employs everyone who lives on site. And the nonprofit specifically addresses two major components. One is bringing people in through school garden projects to learn how to do heirloom organic cultivation and animal husbandry and ecosystem restoration and green building as coursework for visiting campuses. And then the second side of that is that organization then goes out into the community and provides, through training and facilitation, a model of their process, including economics and spreadsheets and insurance issues and legal issues and land use issues and everything else, so that they can, that other people can replicate the working model that they've established over time. And I think that, to look at this from the 30,000 foot perspective, as was mentioned earlier, is really daunting. But that if people can understand the whole picture of a working model and then apply it sensitive to their regional needs, it can work. And that, I think that replication piece is how we ultimately can affect the greatest number of people, in the shortest period of time, in what is an ecological and economic and social and health, total breakdown, which, as terrible as it is also the most opportune time I think I've ever seen for people to reset in a meaningful way. So just in summary again, a collaborative creation of a document that can be used as a tool set for any community anywhere to apply relevant to their cultural and environmental and other conditions that are site appropriate. And then, you know, looking at those models that have really, you know, John, I mean, I'm, you know this already, but like, it's overwhelming for me to approach all of the components, right? But if I had a working document that I could facilitate, for example, I could find all the people that would need to be found in order to do all of the different pieces of the puzzle to make something actualize. So that's what I wanted to offer, and I really appreciate you giving me a minute to
Yeah,
speak, and it's been great to hear
so
everybody.
good to hear. And I think, yeah, bravo. And I think if you scroll back on the chat here to 4:20 this afternoon, Hugo has been working on an amazing thing. If you just look at it, it's visually connecting all of these ideas in a graphic form here, sort of live. And I can see a lot of enthusiasm from Jessica here. And then I wanted to call on Canyon. So Jessica, what is it you're burning to say? Where are you?
Oh, I'm not burning. I just wanted to say, Jesse, and just all of the men that are on here speaking, I just want to thank you. Just because you are saying and speaking all the things that I've had in my mind, just kind of witnessing, working on community services and people of need, and then now working in Hollywood Hills and just looking at the micro environments as John has been doing, and then looking at how it informs the macro. And I feel that what we need to be doing is taking local approaches to these issues, and that's what we're aiming to do at the Birdhouse, but we're trying to do it in a holistic manner. And one of the things that I was telling John is that we need to create the tools, because even though we're not going to create the template that's replicable anywhere, the tools are essential, because people on the ground, the people that I've helped with or helped are ready. They're hungry, but they're hungry in different ways. And so if we can provide them the tools, if all of these resources can be harnessed, if all of these minds come together, then we can create the tools, and then I can look at my connections and then go and give them the tools that are necessary to get this work done. So I just want to echo all of the wonderful things that are being said. Jesse would love to connect, but I would love to connect with all of you, and whatever team is being formulated here, I would love to be a part of.
Thank you. Kenyon, I know you've been waiting.
Hi there. I want to bring into consideration like one of the most pervasive conversations that needs to be had, and it's around cultural competency. It's around introspection. It's around communal development and restorative justice measures, because from as simple as when I see some of the permaculture conversations happening, we have an affluent, entitled energy of saying, oh, I've got my permaculture design certificate, yet there are people profiting off of indigenous culture and off of indigenous wisdoms without being reciprocal to the land or the accountability towards colonization, like the edible and medicinal food tours and scavenging conversations, where majority of the conversation is people who can afford it, and then people profiting off of it without even talking about the layered history to the ecological system when it comes to colonization, and then when it comes to why are there these disparities. I highly recommend everyone go watch Gather, the film, because it points out these disparities and how indigenous peoples are resilient. At the same time, it feels as though we're way behind, because some of my cousins are just on survival mode, only able to just barely get by. So not all indigenous peoples have wonderful, beautiful, amazing wisdom and an opportunity to engage in culture sharing, nor should they. And nor should they be someone to educate and share. But I mean, when it comes to thinking about white supremacy, when it comes to thinking about white fragility, when it comes to thinking about how we interface with each other, because civility politics silences passionate voices. And so if we're all just thinking philosophically and how we can create this amazing thing, and we're not talking about the equitable conversations to combat, at least at minimum, education. Like, I really wish Kiss the Ground and Gather were mandatory classes for all 8th graders, or maybe sophomore or
Amen.
juniors.
Amen.
And so like if people got exposed to that truth, because I'm out here hustling around, I visit third graders and I talk to them about genocide. And then I talk to teachers about cultural competency and cultural sensitivity and inclusive terminology, from as simple as don't put indigenous peoples in the past tense. Yes, our ancestors can be phrased as past tense. My ancestors used to live this way, and indigenous peoples continue to steward the land. Because many teachers tend to say, we don't know much about the Ohlone people. But what I'm trying to point out is the big reason why I when I learned about uh, ecosystem restoration camps, I'm like, I don't know how they operate in other countries, but I'll be for damn sure if my voice is going to be shared, I'm going to make sure. I'm going to make sure that there's a cultural competency element in this realm, because we can't just have people who are raised in a Western settler colonial mindset come around and be like, swales everywhere, and oh, we need more trees, and oh, let's make a rainforest in a desert, and not know the history of the land. 50 years, 150 years, 250 years, because California has been impacted 250 years, but there are still grandparents that are alive, or just recently one generation has passed, who remember burning and being charged and penalized because they were culturally burning in a good way, the way our ancestors have always tended the land. But like when we think about all of the histories of these places, John Muir, conservation, let's put a fence around it and leave it wild. No, like if you look at all of the writings about California, Garden of Eden, California is beautiful and wonderful. Is there ever any accountability or validity to them saying, oh, wow, indigenous peoples have been managing this? No, it's only in our tiny little circles. I love our tiny little circles. I love our support our community. I love preaching to the choir. However, we need to hit the people who aren't ready. Well, they need to be ready. We need to hit the community members who don't know, nor do they think or know that they should care. It's those beings who curb the market. It's those beings who create the trends. Well, anybody can create trends with the timing.
I would
But I mean,
love
of
it
influence.
if Canyon, you
Influence.
could stay in touch, and we can post some things on the Birdhouse site and just be more relevant and give people like us an opportunity to know where to go. Thank you
Yeah.
for the reference to
Thank you.
the Gather film, and you put that in the thing, right? In the chat.
I think so. I hope you can share the chat, because when I got disconnected, I lost the history of the chat. So I was going to scroll up to double check who was part of what, and I lost the history thanks to device.
I'll make that available for anybody who reaches out. John D. Liu.
And I just wanted to mention that the ecosystem restoration camps is going to show, is going to have a Q&A again, like the common land one we just did. And that's another chance for us to join. So I'll send you an invitation.
Ooh,
We'll
excellent.
Nikki.
Awesome, Possum.
Thank you. Nikki, you want something? I don't hear you.
No sound. Is your
No
sound
sound.
load? I mean, you need to raise your sound. You took off the thing, but you might need to.
You joined the audio already, right, Nikki?
While she's figuring that out, I just wanted to say, I have this, like, I've noticed like the dreaming thing really works. Like I was dreaming about the ecosystem restoration camps, and I thought nobody's going to do that. But then I started to write about it, and there's lots of people who want to do it. I think we should make a creator space and a central kitchen in somewhere in Los Angeles, Hollywood, someplace where along the LA River, I mean, wherever you want it and wherever it can be done. And let's make a big stage, and let's invite everybody to come down there and teach everybody. And then let's all the filmmakers get together, and let's do festivals and film everything, and have everybody come and eat together and talk about, like, how do we go forward? Jesse's idea of writing up a sort of how would you call that?
A document of some kind.
Writing up a play, you know, of something, a summary, a description of how to do this. All of that can come out of that, but we need to go now to do things. And so let's not lose any energy. Let's try to gather more and more people together and figure out who really wants it. Because if we make a central kitchen and we're cooking every day and people come and eat the meals and people do their laundry and take a shower and take a sauna and they listen to the band and they watch the movies, we can show Gather and Kiss the Ground and, you know, all the different films. It'll be great. It'll be like a big drive-in theater.
That's a good place to start.
Nikki, are you fixed?
Does anyone here read lips? Maybe Nikki could just, I know we're getting to the end of the time here too, so I just wanted to be respectful of everybody. And
yeah, Nikki could type her comments in the chat and you could read them if she wanted to do that.
yeah, sure. Lay it down, Nikki. Yeah, I mean, just watching Hugo go to work here is kind of inspiring because it's, I don't know if you can hit that link. It pops up with this amazing real-time vortex of thought bubbles that he's creating connections between the things we're saying. I feel like probably the best way to do this is, with your permission, we'll continue the possibility of another connection online, but with the next step in place. So anybody who wants to contribute to this document that sees a possibility in it, there's got to be some leadership that shows up out of this group other than, you know, John and me. It's an invitation to step up. And I mean, there's so much talent and resources in this group that it would be wonderful if everybody just kind of knew that, checking out each other's links and whatnot. The history here is just full of possibility. So
Can you hear me
yeah.
now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Cool. Classic restart. I was just saying that I wanted to thank everyone for being here and for speaking and for giving this attention and passion to so many important issues. And mostly wanted to share the farmer. I've been farming for 10 years and I got interested in farming because I believed it to be a tool for change and community development. And only since I've started farming, I've learned also of the environmental impact and also the personal and spiritual benefits that it provides. And I want to just highlight and share my favorite farmer right now, Chris Newman of Sylvanaqua Farms. And he has been farming not for very long, but I think is hitting it right on the head with a lot of busting a lot of the lies of what we have been told and how we thought we could maybe change the system one small family farm at a time, but it develops, it actually requires more of a collective conscious collaboration, just like what you guys are speaking of right now. And it's not necessarily something new, but it is highlighting what indigenous populations were doing at scale in this country all around the world, and that it is possible. So I just recommend checking out his work. And I think I posted like a kind of introductory article that he wrote, but he has a lot of information on. He's very active on Twitter and Instagram.
Maybe you can share some link. I shared just now what I could find, but
that's one article. It's pretty simple overlay. And then there's another really great talk that I'll share here too that I find kind of is honest and hopeful approach. So those are 2 links. Thank you.
Beautiful. I'm wondering if Jack's there behind the frozen image. Yeah, you could tell us about the restoration your work doing on a large scale in Los Angeles. He's part of 350.org.
Thanks, John. Hello, everyone. Jack, I've been working for a few years on Banning Ranch, which back in 2016 was a major fight at the Coastal Commission. It's a 400-acre wetland. It's right at the mouth of the Santa Ana River, between Huntington Beach and Newport Beach. We're in serious contention for the ability to sort of push forward. We've done, in the last couple of years, we did a vision plan and have put it forward, and we're able to raise $50 million towards the purchase of this property, which is a existing and historic oil field, and owned by a conglomerate between the oil company and a developer, a hedge fund, etc. But lately we've run into real serious control issues. So it's, it's in question on what's going to happen, but the acquisition of this 400-acre piece of land is still moving forward, and we're working on developing our plan that we've put forward, which basically looks at about 10 acres to be dedicated towards academic research. We're partnering with the Ahachimen native folks as well as the Tongva on a secondary basis. The primary would be the Ahachimen, who are the traditional inhabitants and still have, it's the tribal council who we're working with mainly there, as well as some other folks. And all of us are having trouble being heard through the public funding mechanisms, through wanting to transfer the property to the county's interest in taking full control and doing what they could do. So there's a lot of big questions whenever you're dealing with a large scale piece of land. But the important thing to remember about this piece of land is that the Santa Ana River is the longest river in Southern California. It stretches all the way up into the desert. It's the historic highway for the indigenous folks, and such an important central to the ecosystem refunctioning, and certainly a good portion of it has been channelized in the way that the LA River has, but it's an even more significant river. So the goal of restoration of that estuary at the mouth of the ocean is of primary importance, and connecting all the way up river through the communities to create open space, to create public access, and connection and education, teaching people how to reconnect with the land. And that's why these type of movements towards ecosystem restoration really need to start with community, and they absolutely need to start with the communities on the ground, starting that we're working with the indigenous folks, but also the communities that live nearby. We've got Santa Ana, Anaheim, all these communities where people are completely disconnected from the land with no space to roam, and this is a real opportunity for that. So stay tuned, because the battle is going to continue. We spent years and years trying to get it out of a major development, which we were successful. And so the next phase is getting it acquired and into public-private hands, and the struggle goes on.
Thanks, Jack. It's awesome. I mean, I'm sorry to hear the resistance, of course. It's just like that. I feel like, who's sharing? Is that John? Yeah, this is live, right?
I put that up. It's not live.
Oh, okay.
Is it live? Well, it's live on the website.
Okay, well, when you see it, you can actually move around on it and click on things. And this is our meeting today, which, this is amazing. I saw it for the first time today, so we'll be able to toy with it later. And I'm not sure how we can feed back on this or whatnot. But listen, I feel the need to close just out of respect for others. And I'm just wondering if anyone wants to throw out an idea or a offer or a to next steps, if there's going to be any. I got what sorry, I'm forgetting his name. So Marissa, why don't you speak up?
Hi. So I would like, it sounds like there's a lot of, I'm in Northern California, and so I know there's a lot of people here from different organizations in Southern California. And I saw this similar process a few years back at a conference where groups of people came together and they formed the NorCal Resilience Network. So they're an umbrella organization. They do fundraising together. They dole out the grants to different groups. I know there's a few people on this call. Canyon, I think you're part of this, and I see Ellen Farmer. And I think it's really good. It's all run, and they have a great model. They have a lot of open source materials they could probably share with you if that's what you're thinking about, coalescing these groups together. Or maybe the birdhouse is already doing that. I'm not really sure. So I just want to mention that. And I put the link in there, and like 350.org is part of it. So that's just a.
Ellen was on the call earlier, and it's, I think, Santa Cruz based. But I mean, yeah.
It's in Oakland.
It is? Okay. Sorry.
Their office. So, yeah.
Well, we have a lot of people here in California, but you have folks in Massachusetts and in Belgium right now. So this is really a worldwide issue. And John, while you're quarantined here, clearly, you're our man in Beijing.
I mean, that's the benefit of COVID. We did I shouldn't say that. We did a recent event where there were people from all over the world. We could not have had them go out with us to do a tour, and that opened up it's the positive part of this, that we can really share our resources because of, anyway, that's what I want to say.
Johnny, can I ask a question about your having recorded this? Does that also mean you recorded the chat room conversations as well that had all those links and references and so forth?
Yeah.
Is that something you will share with each of us participants? Because
yeah, I have if you were not invited by an email from me, please put your email in this chat, because that will make a comprehensive list of everybody that attended today. And I will share the link to this video, which I'll post, and to the chat, which comes in a hideous text form that I'll have to clean up before it's presentable. But yeah, I'll do that. And really, I trust in the gods and goddesses to decide what next. It's full of possibility and potential. So, there's no shortage of hubs. The birdhouse can act as a hub. Essentially, the ecosystem restoration camps is a hub. And I threw in here, by the way, a link to the training course. That is, I think, a 6-month course I'll be attending that's given by the ecosystem restoration camps and teachers from around the world. So it's very hands-on, for some of us who might be asking questions like, where do I start and how do I do it? And I invite you all to join us for the Soil Sponge Collective Days, which have been typically on Saturday from 9 to 2 or 3 p.m. That are just really satisfaction, of getting your hands and learning the process. Linda Gibbs wasn't on the call today, but she's very educated in a number of different soil sciences, including Elaine Ingham and bio, what's the, yeah, any rate, she's our fearless leader and it's a lot of fun. Biodynamics is the word I was looking for, thanks. So yeah, Robin or John, does anybody want to make some kind of last comments and offerings before we close up shop?
Yeah.
You go.
I will, John and I are going to speak a bit, but I will offer up that to help write that one sheet for you with you
Beautiful.
of capturing like what we're looking at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. That's, a place to start. I really appreciate. John's.
So hi, well, my name is Hugo, and thank you for the invitation. I just wanted to say thank you and to guide you a little bit on the vortex. And I think this is a tool that could be useful for all of you, just to gather some ideas and to have more convergent conversations maybe. In my case, since you are looking also for next steps, it seems that you have a nice opportunity on spaces and specifically in the home gardening industry in LA. But you also have a big community of young people, veterans, urban networks, farmers, volunteers, homeless, indigenous cultures that can be fitting the ecosystem restoration camps, and that can be converted into different kinds of possibilities, like central kitchens, regenerative agriculture, or creator spaces. So it depends actually for each of you, where are you based and what the kind of things, but let's say that we need for sure to move into a life with more purpose and moving from a non-functional economic thinking into more better humanity behavior. And we need to value differently the ecosystems and the water. So what I've heard from John for all of us is that we really need to take care about having functional ecological functions as an evolutionary succession process. So we need to take care of the water and the hydrological cycles. And this is the kind of things that we are trying to put together. These kind of tools will empower local perspectives, and it's about to connect solutions. But for example, when you see regeneration happens in patches, and then once that you have many patches, you go into an ecosystem, you can have a bioregion, a planet, already like with more abundance. So I think if we can enhance this relationship between life and water, we can start by doing different things at different layers. But it's very important, the activities that you are going to do here. So feel free to contact me if you want, but I just wanted to share this kind of thinking with you guys.
Amazing. A little round of applause on that one.
Thank you. And the kind of thing that we're trying to implement in Las Calabazas is really something more geo-referentiated, because we feel that now with the technology, we can connect this kind of thinking of ecosystem thinking and then going into a specific territory. So how can we distribute resources in a way that could be more interesting? And you can have a multidimensional approach on this kind of thing. So by having it, you can get into understanding transformation or getting to know your knowledge ecosystem there, and the organization could be represented. So it is very much locally attuned. You can have kind of a fractal voice for the community in the form of a survey. So I would like also to introduce this kind of thinking and tools, because this could be something like unites us in a way as a virtual Gaia. So I'm working with Archie, Omar, Dennis, and this is, for example, some of the insight spheres. So this ecosystem in Panama, it is having a lot of sequestration and less production. So how can we actually do something different there? And well, I don't know, I think this is also something that could be useful for any given moment of the conversations that I was hearing. And whatever you need, just please contact me. And I'm happy to share these kind of things, because I think we really need to have the tool set for encouraging and enhancing regeneration. And intention is important. So since I was in nature, I didn't see so many tools with this real intention of enhancing nature and creating conditions conducive to life. But this is the kind of things that we can find right now online, and that I hope are going to be helpful for all this movement.
It's beautiful to hear a guy who's clearly involved in technology say that we're creating systems and conditions for life. These are biotic systems we're trying to develop everywhere. That's the most important thing we can do, is just create life in the soil. It starts with the microbes and evolves toward full evolution forests.
Everybody should know that Hugo is the founder of 7 Vortex. And if you go to 7 Vortex on the internet, you can find his work.
Yeah, there's a link in there.
He's great.
Does anybody have a final offering they'd like to, Dennis? Mute?
Unmute, yeah.
I want to just commend Archie and Hugo for putting a phrase in my head that each of us has talked about in our own ways today. We need each of us to actually create a regeneration station. And regenerate and or regeneration is more than just trying to figure out how to solve a problem, whether large or small. It's dealing with a concept of how do we regenerate our planet, and with whom do we want to work to make that happen. And we don't have a lot of time to get it done, or at least get it launched, so that my kids or my grandkids can actually benefit from all the work we're putting in as we speak. So I'm hoping that you'll include Archie and Hugo in your thoughts, and also in your purchase orders ultimately, because that's what's going to be needed. We'll use other people's money, whether it's the city of Calabasas or city of LA or Santa Monica, or it's somewhere in Antwerp, Belgium, or it's in the Maimane Reserve in Panama, or in the Yucatan somewhere. The need is incredible. The imperative is urgent, and the budget is confused. So we need to figure out how to pay for all this stuff, and how quickly. So regenerate the planet.
Robin has his hand up.
Yeah, Robin.
Great. Yeah, I'm just going to make it quick. I know we're a little over time. I just, first of all, want to say thank you, everybody, for being here. I just really think that there's some brilliant people here, and there's a great vision and energy. And I just wanted to go back to, I don't know your name, Bay Area Green Tours, with the reference to the NorCal resilience community, and how there's something here forming, but it's still quite amorphous, and we still require a lot of direction and leadership. And in that, I just wanted to honor Alexa Russo, just because what I've been seeing in the discussions, and just the energy and the quality of questions you're bringing is really kind of asking for direction and cohesion. And so it's kind of I suppose, a nudge that I just wanted to let you know that I see you. And I think that you are kind of operating from a meta perspective that I really value. So thank you.
Thanks so much, and I'm happy to help in whatever aspect. Working with the team, I volunteer myself for for that and more.
Beautiful. It's all so good. Really,
I want to say thank you to y'all, and good night for now, and look forward to more. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
Happy Thanksgiving to everybody.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah,
Happy
everyone.
Thanksgiving.
Time for gratitude. Thank you so much. And you'll be hearing from us, at least in one way or another.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Good evening.
Hmm.
kind of hanging out.
Wait a minute. There's
John, thank you so much.
Green Tours and Jane Felice.
Right. We worked together, and I was with you in Piscini's Ranch for 3 days about 2 years ago when we were launching the restoration
What is
projects.
your name?
My name-
Marissa.
Marissa.
Marissa. Okay.
Yeah. John and I go back about 40 years.
Johnny. Yeah.
And then I went to Paradise and you spoke to us via the big movie.
Oh, yeah.
That was really wonderful.
I think the outcomes, what I think is amazing is I really feel like I'm extremely limited and even I had a lot of friends who were journalists with me and they became famous and rich and everything. And I thought, I'm a failure, gosh, wow.
That's how I feel. For 12 years, I've been showing people, hey, look what these people are doing. They're so cool. And then they take off, for a big time. And I'm like,
what's interesting is one of the guys was the bureau chief of one of the news bureaus in China, and I was kind of depressed. I was saying, "Oh, I'm not doing very well," and he said, "Well, John, I don't know. I mean, it depends on how you measure."
That's right.
And he was telling me, like, we can't even believe what you've been able to do. At that point, I'd taken 1,000 films to China and translated them into Chinese to like sensitize the Chinese.
Well, you said this in the very beginning. You were just talking about that. It isn't about how much stuff you have. It's the impact you have. And I feel like my greatest joy is working with a lot of young people for years and years who've gone on to go into the environmental movement, to see people's lives change. And I think one of the biggest takeaways for me that someone said here is not preaching to the choir, like getting people on board who don't know these things. That's why I thought Kiss the Ground was so great, because it was accessible, glitzy in a way people would accept, like look at it and understand it.
What I really think is the best idea is we really go in and choose some ruined shopping center.
I love that idea.
I have just the place for you, John.
Okay.
I've got 400 of them.
So, every town has one now, but we have a shopping center of about 30,000 square feet, and all we got in it is a nail salon and a transient fitness center. You know how those things play out. They come and go. So there might be a possibility there, and certainly at Headwaters Corner, we need to talk about that specifically. But if I can just mention one other thing to you, John, if you want to actually feel good about what you've done in the low valley or plain area that you talked about, if you look at the value in money of what you've done or what you've avoided, I can share that in the Malibu Creek watershed. We have a watershed restoration plan that we started with the Conservation Service in 1990. And in the 30 intervening years, we've generated $1 billion worth of value in sustaining their habitat or changing the development practices or protecting the scenic corridors or setting up the institutions to recover from disasters, from earthquakes to fires to floods and landslides. I mean, it goes on and on. And I would bet that you could literally monetize what you've done in each of your major project areas, not to take credit, but to recognize that there is a value to what you've done that's monetary, because most of us are dealing with monetary measures still, even though that's, from basically the 19th century, if you think about it.
Or even earlier. I think it goes back to the golden
the Romans and the Phoenicians, I understand. Anyway, thank you all. I got to go.
Bye.
Yeah.
Look forward to talking in the future.
We'll
Excellent.
check up, Marissa. We'll check in.
I know, I really want to talk to you. I want to tell you one more quick thing. My family in Alabama lived in a little town where the shopping center went out. Boom, and the city took it over and made it turned it into the city hall and everything instead of building a new city hall. Not, look at other ways. Well, how can every one of those big cavernous places be reused?
I really like the idea of these creator spaces because we really could recycle everything. We could repair. They could be repair cafes. And I mean, even the homeless, I mean, even whatever they're using, they need to repair it, and so they can go and repair, and then then the people can bring their appliances and say, can you repair this? And we could have we could teach people how to repair everything.
Yeah.
But we could also build kitchens. We could we start doing plumbing, start doing kitchens, and build these central kitchens and feed people. And next to it, have the stage, and put in amplifiers. And every night is a festival. Every night is movie night. Something.
You want to move to LA?
And the food. The real key to this is the food.
Got to be great, excellent
great food, and everybody comes. Nobody pays. You come and you eat, and if you have money, you can put it in the box. But we're going out and raising money, and in that community, everybody eats.
And everybody donates their leftover food, all the food that they can't sell, and then like in Alameda, they have a program called Food Shift, where they take all the food and they train people who live in a naval base. They're all formerly, a lot of them are battered women, homeless people that live in this place that can work at Food Shift and learn culinary skills. And then
even better,
yeah,
we can do that, but even better is to actually raise money and pay the producers. And buy all the organic, all the biodynamic food when it comes ready, when it's ripe, you have to harvest. So some of it gets wasted. Don't let any waste come. Get it all and process it.
Right.
So we can have pickles, and we can have kimchi, and we can have sauerkraut, and we can have soups and things that we can just warm up.
Yeah.
And we can feed people forever this way. So we just take it out of we pay the farmers, and then they keep growing, and then more people, we teach them. We have people who are going through this system, and they're cleaning themselves up. They can work in farms.
There's a model in Oakland. It's called Colors Restaurant. It's where what's it called? There's several nonprofits in this old building. I think used to be a bank, and they couldn't open because of the situation. But basically, they're teaching people culinary skills and things like being a sommelier, like high-end paying jobs in the culinary world, not being dishwashers, but actually learning how to work in a fancy restaurant. Then they go out and they have that model to do. And you have so many fancy restaurants in LA when they open up, something like that, where people get trained.
There are a lot less now.
Someone who didn't make it on the call today is doing that down in South Central LA. A big industrial kitchen. She didn't make it to the call, but she could have spoke to that. They train, like you're saying, not just low-level jobs, but high-level thinking and training on preparing food. Some people just eat out of cans, like they don't know what it means to cook and to take raw materials. And so, yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
You can make even boxes for people to buy, or prepared food for workers to, oh, I don't have time to cook, pick up meals, all kinds of things.
I think if we
John, there's your creative, your creator space supervisor right there. Bay Area Green Tours. I would just mention this last thing, and then I will hang up on us. But there are 482 cities in California and 54 counties. All of their facilities are shut. That's the example of anthropause I'm describing to you. Everybody's working from home. A lot of folks are coasting, waiting for the next stimulus package and everything else. But the facilities, they're not going anywhere. And many of them already have kitchens and have amphitheaters and have
Yeah.
auditoriums and have libraries, all the things that you're describing you need to have in order to change the culture.
Yeah.
So creator spaces could be made out of, 482 civic centers in California if we don't wait too far from when the anthropause is lifted. So we'll have to go from there.
Yeah. Beautiful thinking.
I
We'll
love that.
talk some more, guys. Bye.
Thank you.
I'm going to hang up, Marissa and John. Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you so much. It was a
Thank
great
you,
pleasure.
John. That was an inspiration. Awesome.
Bye.
We'll talk.